Admiral stood in the Great Hall of Prime and watched the galaxy decide to kill her species. The ceiling rose so high above her that clouds formed near the top. Crystal pillars glowed with soft blue light. 1,000 alien delegates sat in floating chairs arranged in a perfect circle. And at the center of it all, the 12 elder races voted on whether humanity deserved to exist. "The humans breed too fast," said the High Speaker. His scales were deep purple, and his eyes held the cold patience of a predator who had never known fear. "In another 1,000 years, they will outnumber us all. We have seen this pattern before. Aggressive species must be controlled." Kept her face calm. She had been trained for moments like this. Show nothing. Give them nothing. But inside her chest, her heart beat like a war drum. "The Concordat recognizes the threat," announced the Prime Minister. His body was made of living crystal, and light moved through him like slow rivers. "We vote to reduce the human population by 60%. The Purge fleet will deploy in 3 cycles." 60%. 4 billion people. Did the math without wanting to. They were talking about killing 4 billion human beings, and they discussed it the same way farmers discuss killing chickens. She wanted to scream. She wanted to pull out her sidearm and start shooting. But she did neither. Instead, she bowed her head slightly, turned, and walked out of the great hall. Her boots made no sound on the crystal floor. Behind her, the elder races continued their discussion. They had already moved on to other matters. The human question was settled. It was not even the most important item on their agenda. The flight back to Earth took 11 days. Spent most of that time alone in her cabin, staring at the stars through the small window. Each point of light was a sun. Many of them had planets, and on those planets, humans were living their lives without knowing that death was coming. She thought about her daughter, who was 7 years old and loved to paint pictures of spaceships. She thought about her mother, who still grew tomatoes in the small garden behind their house in Osaka. She thought about the billions of people who woke up each morning, went to work, fell in love, had children, grew old, and never imagined that alien beings had just voted to end their bloodline. When her ship landed at the Tokyo spaceport, a military escort was waiting. They drove her through the city in an unmarked vehicle. Outside the windows, life continued as normal. People walked to restaurants. Children played in parks. Nobody knew. The United Terran Assembly met in a bunker 300 meters below the Pacific Ocean. The room was plain concrete, lit by harsh white lights. No crystal pillars here. No floating chairs. Just metal tables and tired faces and the weight of impossible decisions. "They gave us 3 cycles," told them. 18 months, then the Purge fleet arrives. "How many ships?" asked Admiral, the oldest person in the room. "Based on previous cullings, between 30 and 50,000. Silence, the number was too big to process. Humanity's official navy consisted of 800 frigates. The Concordat had forbidden them from building anything larger. For 300 years, humans had followed this rule. They had been good and obedient and hoped that compliance would earn them safety. It had earned them nothing. "Then we are dead," said one of the politicians. His voice was hollow. "There is no way to fight such a force." Admiral smiled. It was a thin smile, tired but not defeated. "There is something you need to see," he said. They took a shuttle to the outer edge of the solar system, past Neptune, into the dark space where comets were born. Had made this journey many times over the past 20 years, but she still felt her breath catch when they arrived. The shipyard was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid 50 kilometers wide. From the outside, it looked like any other rock drifting through space. From the inside, it looked like the future. Ships, hundreds of ships, thousands of ships, vessels so massive that its mind struggled to accept their size. Dreadnoughts measuring 20 kilometers from front to back. Carriers that could hold entire fleets inside their bellies. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, all painted in black so deep that they seemed to drink the light around them. And at the center of the shipyard, still being fitted with its final weapons, was the Prometheus. 43 kilometers long, 12 kilometers wide. A ship the size of a city. A ship that broke every law the Concordat had ever written. A ship that had been built in secret piece by piece over 200 years. "How," whispered one of the politicians. "We started building the day after the Concordat told us we could not," said Admiral. "Every generation added to the work. Every generation kept the secret. We called it the Black Fleet because it would never see the light until the hour of our greatest need." Walked to the observation window and looked out at the Prometheus. Workers in spacesuits crawled across its hull like ants on a sleeping giant. In 18 months, that giant would wake up. "The Concordat thinks we are sheep," she said quietly. "They think we accepted their chains because we were weak. They never understood." She turned to face the assembly. "We accepted their chains because we were not ready. We smiled and bowed and said, 'Yes, master, of course, master,' while our children built weapons in the dark." She thought of painting her pictures of spaceships, would never have to bow to anyone. "The Black Fleet is almost complete," continued. 300 dreadnoughts, 50 carrier Titans, over 4,000 support vessels. We have weapons the Concordat has never seen. We have technology they do not know exists. We have spent 300 years preparing for this moment." The assembly voted. It was unanimous. Admiral was given command of the Black Fleet. She accepted the responsibility with a single nod. No speeches, no ceremonies. There was no time for such things. That night, she sent a message to every human colony in the galaxy. The message was short and encrypted, designed to look like routine traffic, but every human who received it knew what it meant. "Wake the children, light the forges. The long night is over." Across 47 star systems, humans looked up at the sky and understood. The time for hiding was finished. The time for fear was finished. The time for bowing and scraping and hopping for mercy was finished. Now came the fire. In her quarters aboard the Prometheus, looked at a photograph of her daughter. She kissed it once and placed it in her breast pocket over her heart. "We did not want this war," she said to the empty room, "but we will finish it." Outside the window, the Black Fleet began to move. Silent as shadows, dark as death, the ships of humanity slipped out of their hiding places and gathered in the void between stars. They carried no lights. They broadcast no signals. They were ghosts made of metal and fury, and they were coming for everyone who had ever thought humanity was prey. The galaxy did not know it yet, but everything was about to change. High Admiral Oran stood on the bridge of his flagship and felt something he had not felt in 300 years of military service. He felt bored. The Purge fleet stretched across space like a river of steel and fire. 40,000 warships, crewed by warriors from 6 different elder races. They had gathered from every corner of the Concordat to participate in this holy mission, the cleansing of humanity. Oran had led 7 previous purges. 7 younger races had been erased from existence under his command. The pattern was always the same. The younger race would panic. They would send their tiny ships to fight. Those ships would be destroyed in hours. Then the real work would begin. The bombardment of planets, the hunting of survivors, the slow, thorough extinction of an entire species. It usually took about 6 months. Oran expected humanity would take less. They had no real navy. They had no allies. They had nothing but their strange stubbornness and their too-fast breeding. "We are entering the expanse," reported his sensor officer. "Human defense fleet detected, approximately 200 vessels." 200, Oran almost laughed, against 40,000. "Signal the forward squadrons to engage," he said lazily. "I will be in my quarters. Notify me when it is over." He was halfway to the door when his sensor officer made a strange sound. It was not quite a word. It was more like the noise a small animal makes when it sees a predator. "High Admiral," the officer whispered, "the stars are going out." Oran turned back. "What?" "The background stars, they are disappearing." On the main, Oran watched as points of light vanished one by one. It was as if something huge was moving between his fleet and the rest of the galaxy. Something so vast that it blocked out the stars themselves. "Sensor malfunction," he said, but his voice was uncertain. "All sensors are functioning normally, High Admiral. There is something out there, many somethings. They are—" The officer's scales went pale. "They are enormous." The first ship directly in front of the Purge fleet. It was a dreadnought 20 kilometers long, painted in black so dark that it was almost invisible against the void. Then another appeared, then another, then 100 more. Oran gripped the railing of his command platform. His claws left marks in the metal. The ships kept appearing, dreadnoughts by the hundreds, carriers the size of small moons, destroyers and cruisers and battleships, all emerging from nothing like ghosts becoming solid. The Black Fleet unveiled itself, and it was larger than anything Oran had ever seen. And then, at the center of it all, the Prometheus arrived. It did not like the others. It tore open space itself, ripping a hole in reality and pushing through like a creature being born. 43 kilometers of armored hull, bristling with weapons that Orion did not recognize. It was not just a ship. It was a statement. It was humanity screaming at the universe that they would not die quietly. A transmission came through on all frequencies. A human female appeared on every screen in the Purge fleet. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with something ancient and dangerous. "This is Admiral of the United Terran Navy," she said. "You came to exterminate us. We have a counteroffer." Orion found his voice. "All ships attack formation, destroy them." The Purge fleet surged forward, 40,000 ships against perhaps 5,000. The numbers still favored the Concordat. Numbers always won. The first volley of Concordat weapons struck the Black Fleet. Plasma beams and nuclear missiles and gravity bombs, enough firepower to crack a planet. The human shields absorbed it. They did not flicker. They did not weaken. They simply drank the energy and held firm. Then the humans fired back. Orion had studied human weapons. He knew their capabilities, or he thought he did. What struck his fleet was nothing like the records. Beams of pure white light cut through Concordat ships like knives through paper. Their shields meant nothing. Their armor meant nothing. Ships that had survived 1,000 battles exploded in seconds. "Impossible," Orion breathed. "That technology does not exist." But it did exist. Humanity had invented it in secret. They had tested it in hidden facilities far from Concordat eyes. They had waited 300 years to use it, and now they were using it with terrible precision. The battle became a slaughter. Concordat ships tried to flee and were cut down. They tried to surrender and were captured. They tried to fight and were destroyed. The human fleet moved through them like wolves through sheep, and everywhere the humans went, fire followed. Commander David stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Lagos and watched his weapons tear through a cruiser. He felt no joy. These were living beings dying out there. Fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, people who had simply followed orders. But he also remembered the slave colonies. He remembered the humans who had been worked to death in Concordat mines for generations. He remembered the Cullings, the 17 species that no longer existed because the elder races had decided they were inconvenient. "For everyone they murdered," he said quietly, "for everyone they would have murdered." The Lagos pressed forward, leading a squadron of destroyers into the heart of the Concordat formation. Around them, the battle raged on. On the Prometheus, Admiral watched the tactical display with cold focus. The plan was working. Human weapons were performing beyond expectations. Concordat defenses were failing across the board. But people were still dying. Human people, her people. Every red dot that vanished from her display was a ship full of crew who would never go home. Young men and women who had volunteered to fly into hell so that humanity could survive. She memorized their ship names. She would remember every single one. "The flagship is attempting to retreat," reported her tactical officer. "No," said, "they do not get to run. All ships focus fire on the flagship. End this." The Black Fleet turned its fury on Iran's command ship. The great vessel, pride of the Navy, lasted exactly 47 seconds under concentrated fire. Its shields collapsed. Its hull cracked. Its reactor went critical. In his final moment, High Admiral Iran opened a channel to the Concordat. His scales had turned white with shock. His voice was barely a whisper. "They were never prey," he said. "We were." Then the flagship exploded, and the leader of the Purge fleet was gone. The battle lasted 11 hours in total. When it was over, the expanse was filled with debris. 40,000 Concordat ships had entered the system. 127 escaped. The rest were either destroyed or captured. The Black Fleet had lost 2,300 vessels. Heavy losses by any measure. But they had won. Against impossible odds, against enemies who had never known defeat, humanity had won. Admiral broadcast a message to the surviving Concordat ships as they fled. "Tell them what you saw here," she said. "Tell them that humanity is coming. Tell them that the age of Cullings is over. Tell them that if they want peace, we will give them peace, but if they want war." She paused and looked at the burning wreckage of the Purge fleet. "If they want war, we will give them that too." Across the galaxy, the elder races received the reports from Expanse. They read the casualty figures. They watched the sensor recordings. And for the first time in 600,000 years, they felt something they had forgotten existed. They felt fear. The humans were not supposed to win. The humans were not supposed to fight at all. They were supposed to be weak and divided and easy to destroy, like all the other younger races before them. But the humans had built a fleet in the darkness. They had waited and planned and prepared. And now that fleet was loose in the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same. In her quarters, Admiral allowed herself one moment of private grief. She wept for the dead. She wept for what was still to come. Then she dried her eyes, straightened her uniform, and returned to the bridge. The first battle was won. The war had only begun. The news of expanse spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species heard the story. Every world saw the recordings. The mighty Purge fleet, pride of the Concordat, had been shattered by creatures the elder races called primitives. In the halls of power, panic took hold. Emergency councils were called. Ancient alliances were renewed. Fleets that had not moved in 10,000 years were activated and sent to defend the. And through it all, the Black Fleet kept coming. Admiral stood over the holographic map in her war room and planned the next phase of the campaign. Her officers surrounded her, their faces tired but determined. They had been fighting for 3 months now. 3 months of battles, of victories, of losses that kept her awake at night. "We push forward on 3 fronts," she said, pointing to the map. "First Fleet takes the border systems. Second Fleet moves against the trade routes. Third Fleet liberates the slave colonies in the outer reach." "The slave colonies are heavily defended," said Captain. "The Concordat uses human prisoners as shields. They know we will not bomb our own people." "Then we will not bomb them. We will land ground forces and take those colonies room by room if we must." His voice was hard. "No human will be left in chains. That is not negotiable." The campaign began. Commander David led the Third Fleet toward the mining colonies, where 3 million humans had been enslaved for generations. His grandmother had been born in those mines. She had escaped as a young woman and spent the rest of her life fighting for the day when her people would be free. She had died 10 years ago, still waiting, carried her photograph in his pocket. The battle for the mining colonies was brutal. The Concordat defenders fought with desperate fury, knowing that defeat meant the loss of their most valuable resource. Human slaves were profitable. Human slaves were compliant. Human slaves could work in conditions that would kill other species. Or so the Concordat had always believed. When the Lagos dropped out of fold space above the primary mining world, saw something that made his heart stop. The surface of the planet was with open pit mines, each 1 kilometer wide. Smoke rose from processing facilities, and everywhere there were humans, working in the pits, hauling ore, dying in the toxic air. "All ships suppression fire only," ordered. "We are here to save lives, not take them. Marines, prepare for planetary assault." The landing was chaos. Concordat troops fought for every building, every tunnel, every meter of ground. Human Marines pushed forward through a storm of plasma fire, taking casualties with every step. But they did not stop. They could not stop. Their brothers and sisters were waiting below. Went down with the third wave. He had not planned to. A commander's place was on his ship. But when he saw the faces of the slaves on the reconnaissance feeds, something broke inside him. These were his people. He needed to be there when they were freed. The fighting in the underground tunnels was the worst. Close quarters, no room to maneuver. Every corner could hide an enemy, lost count of how many times he nearly died. He lost count of how many friends he watched fall. But finally, they reached the slave quarters. The door opened and found himself facing a room full of humans. Men, women, children, thin and pale, and they stared at him with eyes that had forgotten how to hope. "My name is David," he said, his voice cracked. "I am a commander in the United Terran Navy. You are free." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They did not believe him. How could they? They had been told for generations that humans outside the colonies were extinct, that there was no hope of rescue, that they should accept their place and be grateful for the food their masters provided. A small girl, perhaps 6 years old, stepped forward. Her hair was matted and dirty. Her arms were thin as sticks. She looked up with enormous brown eyes. "Are you real?" she whispered. Knelt down so that he was at her level. Tears streamed down his face, but he did not care. "I am real," he said, "and I am taking you home." The liberation of the mining colonies took 2 weeks. When it was over, 3 million humans had been freed. Many were sick. Many were injured. All of them were traumatized by lives spent in bondage. But they were alive and they were free, and that was what mattered. Far across the galaxy, other battles raged. Admiral led the main fleet deeper into Concordat's space, capturing system after system. She followed a simple rule: military targets were destroyed without mercy, but civilians were protected. Every conquered world received humanitarian aid. Every prisoner was treated according to the laws of war. The elder races did not understand. This was not how conquerors behaved. When the Concordat crushed a younger race, they erased every trace of that species from existence. They salted the fields and poisoned the wells and made sure nothing would ever grow again. Humanity did the opposite. They conquered and then they helped rebuild. "Why?" asked a captured general. "We were going to exterminate you. We voted to murder your children. Why do you show us mercy?" Looked at him for a long moment. She thought about all the reasons she could give. Strategic reasons, political reasons, practical reasons. But the truth was simpler than that. "Because we are not you," she said. "We did not survive by becoming monsters. We survived by remembering who we are." The war continued. Month after month, battle after battle. The Black Fleet pushed forward and the Concordat fell back. 12 elder race were captured. Ancient empires that had ruled for hundreds of thousands of years suddenly found themselves occupied by creatures they had dismissed as vermin. But even as humanity won victory after victory, the cost mounted. In a temple on the crystal world of Prime, the Concordat leadership gathered for a desperate ceremony. They had one option left, one hope remaining. They would call upon the architects. The architects were the oldest beings in the galaxy. They had seeded life on countless worlds millions of years ago, then ascended to a higher dimension. They rarely interfered in the affairs of younger species. But surely, they would not allow humanity to destroy the order they had created. The summoning took 7 days. On the final day, reality folded and the architects appeared. They were beings of pure light, vast and ancient beyond comprehension. Their voices resonated in the minds of all who heard them. "Why have you called us?" The Concordat Prime Minister bowed low. "Great Ones, the humans are destroying everything. They have overturned the natural order. They threaten the peace that has endured for 600,000 years. We beg you to stop them." The architects were silent for a long moment. Then they spoke again. "We have observed this conflict. We have watched the humans fight and win and show mercy to their defeated enemies. We have watched the Concordat vote to murder billions of innocent beings simply because they feared what those beings might become." The Prime Minister's crystal body flickered with fear. "Great Ones, the humans are dangerous. They breed too fast. They are too aggressive. They will upset the balance of the galaxy. You sought to murder children in their cradle because you feared what they might become," the architects said. "Now see what they have become. The humans did not start this war. You did. The humans did not vote for genocide. You did. This is not our war. We will not intervene." And then the architects were gone. The Concordat stood alone against the rising tide of humanity. No ancient powers would save them. No higher beings would intervene. They had made their choice 300 years ago when they decided humanity was too dangerous to exist. Now they would live with the consequences. In her quarters aboard the Prometheus, Admiral received news of the architect's decision. She allowed herself a small, grim smile. "They thought the universe would protect them," she said. "They thought they were the chosen ones, the natural rulers of all creation. They never imagined that the universe might choose someone else." She turned back to her tactical display. The path to Prime was opening. The heart of the Concordat lay exposed. The final battle was coming. The Black Fleet arrived at Prime on a cold morning in the Concordat capital. 80 billion aliens looked up at the sky and saw death written in the stars. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and studied the defenses arrayed against her. 200,000 Concordat ships formed a wall around the crystal world. Behind them, orbital defense platforms older than human civilization hummed with deadly energy. Planetary shields covered the surface like a second skin. This was the heart of the Concordat, the seat of power for 12 elder races, the place where humanity's extermination had been voted upon with casual cruelty. Taking this world would end the war. But the cost would be terrible. "Admiral," said her tactical officer, "our projections show victory is achievable, but we will lose at least a third of our remaining fleet, perhaps more." Nodded, she had run the numbers herself. Thousands of ships, millions of lives, the price of survival. She opened a channel to the Concordat command frequency. "This is Admiral of the United Terran Navy. I wish to speak with the Concordat High Council." The response came quickly. A hologram appeared on her bridge, 12 figures, one from each elder race. They looked tired and angry and afraid, though they tried to hide it. "What do you want, human?" asked the representative. "Have you come to gloat before you die?" "I have come to offer peace." Silence. The council members exchanged confused glances. "Peace," the Prime Minister stepped forward, his crystal body flickering with skepticism. "You come with a fleet of warships and speak of peace." "I come with the power to destroy you," said calmly. "Our projections give us victory within 3 days. Your fleets will be debris, your defenses will be rubble, Prime will be ours." "Then why offer peace?" "Because I am not here to destroy you. I am here to end this." She laid out her terms: full recognition of humanity as equals in the galactic community, reparations for 3 centuries of exploitation, the return of all human slaves and prisoners, the permanent dissolution of the Concordat's authority to declare cullings. In exchange, humanity would withdraw from most conquered territories. They would help rebuild what they had destroyed. They would join a new galactic order based on cooperation instead of domination. "You are offering us mercy," the Prime Minister said slowly. "After everything we did to you, after we voted to murder your species, you are offering us mercy." "Yes." "Why?" Thought about her daughter, who had grown into a young woman during the years of war. She thought about Commander and the slaves he had freed. She thought about all the humans who had died so that others might live. "Because becoming what we fought against would be the greatest defeat of all," she said. "We can destroy you. We choose not to. That choice is what makes us human." The council to deliberate waited. Hours passed. On both sides of the divide, warriors held their weapons ready and prayed they would not have to use them. Finally, the council returned. The Prime Minister spoke for all of them. "Your terms are rejected. We will not surrender to a younger race. We would rather die with honor than live with shame." Closed her eyes. She had known this was likely. Pride was a powerful drug, and the elder races had been drunk on it for 600,000 years. "Then you have chosen," she said quietly. "May history judge us both." The Battle of Prime began. The Concordat fleet surged forward, 200,000 ships determined to defend there or die trying. The Black Fleet met them head-on. Space became fire. Admiral commanded her forces with cold precision. Every order was calculated. Every move was planned. But war was chaos, and even the best plans fell apart when the shooting started. Ships exploded on both sides. Debris fields grew thick enough to block sensors. Entire squadrons vanished in the time it took to blink. The casualties mounted faster than anyone could count. On the dreadnought Lagos, Commander fought his ship through the heart of the Concordat formation. His vessel had taken heavy damage. Fires burned in 3 sections. Life support was failing on the lower decks, but the Lagos kept fighting. "Commander," his weapons officer reported, "we are approaching the primary defense platform. Its shields are still at full strength. We cannot breach them with conventional weapons." Looked at the tactical display. The defense platform was the key to the Concordat's planetary shields. If it fell, ground forces could land. If it stood, the siege could last months. He thought about his grandmother. He thought about the slaves he had freed. He thought about the children who would grow up in a galaxy where humanity was hunted and hated. "Set collision course," he said. His officers turned to stare at him. "Commanders." "You heard me. All hands, abandon ship. I will pilot the Lagos myself." They argued, they pleaded, they refused to leave. In the end, had to order them off at gunpoint. He watched the escape pods launch, carrying his crew to safety. Then he turned the Lagos toward the defense platform and pushed the engines to maximum. The ship accelerated. The platform grew larger on the Concordat weapons hammered the Lagos from every angle but did not change course. In his final seconds, he opened a channel to Admiral. "For everyone they would have murdered," he said. "For everyone who comes after." Then the Lagos struck the defense platform at 1/10 the speed of light, and both vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. The planetary shields flickered and died. Ground forces began to land. Admiral received word of sacrifice. She stood in silence for a long moment, her fist pressed against her chest in salute. Then she turned back to the battle. There would be time to mourn later. Now there was work to do. The fighting on Prime lasted for 9 days. Human Marines fought through crystal streets and underground tunnels and ancient temples. The Concordat defenders were brave and skilled, but they had never faced enemies like this. Humans had been fighting in cities since before they discovered fire. Urban warfare was in their blood. On the 10th day, human forces breached the High Council chamber. Walked through the doors herself. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood. Her face was marked with burns from a close plasma strike. Behind her came a squad of Marines, equally battered and equally determined. The 12 council members waited inside. They had not fled. They would not run from their fate. "You could have surrendered," said. "Millions died because you were too proud to admit defeat." The Prime Minister straightened to his full height. "We are the elder races. We have ruled this galaxy for 600,000 years. We do not surrender to children." "Then you will stand trial as war criminals," replied. "The humans you tried to exterminate will judge you. The slaves you kept in chains will testify against you, and the galaxy will see that power does not equal justice." She gestured to her Marines. "Take them." As the council members were led away, an old philosopher approached. He was not a council member, just a scholar who had been trapped in the capital when the siege began. "You confuse me," he said. "You won, you could do anything you want to us. Why show restraint?" Looked out the window at the burning city. So much destruction, so much death, and yet it could have been so much worse. "A long time ago," she said, "someone told me that the true measure of a species is not how they treat their equals. It is how they treat those in their power." She turned back to the philosopher. "You treated us like animals to be culled. We will treat you like people who made terrible mistakes. That is the difference between us." The philosopher was silent for a long moment. "Perhaps," he said finally, "you deserve to win." Shook her head. "Nobody deserves what we have been through, but we survived it, and now we have to figure out what comes next." Outside, the guns fell silent. The Battle of Prime was over. The Concordat had fallen. The war was won. 1 year after the fall of Prime, admirals stood before the Black Wall and wept. The memorial stretched across a valley in northern Japan, cutting through the landscape like a wound that would never fully heal. Obsidian stone, polished to a mirror finish, rose 15 meters high and ran for nearly 3 kilometers. Every centimeter was covered with names. The names of the dead, 4.7 billion of them. Had insisted on this design. She wanted people to understand the cost, not just numbers on a report, but names. Real people with real lives who had been cut short so that humanity could survive. Soldiers and civilians, adults and children, the famous and the forgotten. She found the section she was looking for and placed her hand against the cold stone. "David, Commander UTN Lagos." She traced the letters with her finger. "I wish you could see what we built," she whispered. "I wish you could see what your sacrifice made possible." Behind her, a crowd had gathered. Representatives from every human colony, diplomats from the former Concordat species, journalists recording the ceremony for a galaxy that was still learning to understand humanity. And one young officer who had asked permission to attend. His name was, and his father had been High Admiral Iran, commander of the Purge fleet that had been destroyed at Expanse. He had traveled across the galaxy to ask one question. Noticed him standing apart from the crowd. She walked over, her boots crunching on the gravel path. "You came a long way," she said. "I needed to understand," struggled with the words. His species was not built for humility. "My father led 40,000 ships to exterminate your people. You defeated him with a fraction of that force. How?" Consider the question. She had been asked it many times over the past year. By politicians, by historians, by aliens trying to comprehend how everything had changed so quickly. "Your father expected to find prey," she said finally. "He expected fear and disorganization and surrender. Instead, he found something he had never encountered, a species that had spent its entire existence fighting itself." She turned to look at the Black Wall. "For thousands of years, humans made war on other humans. We learned every trick, every strategy, every way to kill and survive. We became very, very good at it. When your father arrived, he was facing the combined experience of every conflict in human history." "But you were weaker than us," said. "You had fewer ships, less technology, smaller numbers." "Were we?" Smiled slightly. You looked at our public records and saw a species with 800 frigates. You never imagined that we might be hiding something. You never considered that the weak, obedient humans might be planning for the day when obedience would not be enough. She gestured at the wall. These people died because your father underestimated us, but they also died because they refused to be exterminated. They fought not because they thought they could win, but because losing while fighting was better than dying on their knees. Was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you do now? You have the power to rule the galaxy. Every elder race is broken. You could make us serve you the way we made others serve us. Is that what you expect? It is what we would have done. Turned to face him fully. Her eyes were tired but not angry. Let me tell you what we are doing instead. We have established the Galactic Assembly, where every species has an equal voice. We have dismantled the systems that allowed the strong to prey on the weak. We have returned most of the territories we conquered and helped rebuild what we destroyed. But why did not understand. Power exists to be used, that is the natural order. Your natural order, corrected. Not ours, we did not fight to become you, we fought to survive. Now that we have survived, we must become something better. She looked up at the sky, where the Black Fleet still patrolled in silent vigil. Those ships were built for war. We pray every day that we never have to use them again. But if another species tries to do what the Concordat did, if another power decides to exterminate the innocent, they will find us waiting. You would protect others, even the species that tried to kill you. Yes, even the... Placed her hand on the young officer's shoulder. It was a human gesture, one his people did not use, but he seemed to understand its meaning. Your father made a choice, she said. You do not have to repeat it. The future is not written yet. You can help us build something better, or you can spend your life angry about the past. That is your choice to make. The ceremony ended at sunset. Gave a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. She spoke of loss and sacrifice and hope. She spoke of the billions who had died so that humanity could live. She spoke of the future they had earned with their blood. They called us a younger race, she said, her voice echoing across the valley. They meant it as an insult, a way to remind us that we were small and new and unimportant, but young things grow, young things adapt, young things look at the impossible and ask why not. She paused and looked at the names, stretching away into the distance. We did not ask for this war. We did not want to set the galaxy on fire. But when the choice was between extinction and resistance, we chose to fight. And we won. Not because we were stronger or smarter or more ruthless. We won because we refused to give up. We won because every human who has ever lived carried inside them a spark that no force in the universe could extinguish. Her voice grew softer. Now we must prove that we deserve to win. We must build a galaxy where species work together instead of dominating each other. We must become the elders we wished our own elders had been. It will not be easy. It will take generations, but we have never been afraid of hard work. She raised her hand in salute to the wall. For the fallen, for the future, for humanity. 50 years later, a human diplomatic vessel reached the edge of the galaxy. Its mission was to make first contact with a new species that had just achieved faster-than-light travel. The aliens were called They were small, covered in soft blue fur, and absolutely terrified. Their sensors had detected the massive fleets of the inner galaxy. They had intercepted communications describing wars and empires and weapons of unimaginable power. When the human ship appeared, the expected death. Instead, the ambassador who greeted them was a woman with kind eyes and gray hair. Her name was Daughter of the legendary Admiral. She had spent her life preparing for moments like this. Do not be afraid, she said, her voice warm and gentle. I know the galaxy must seem frightening from the outside. There is so much power out here, so much history of conflict and pain. But things are different now. The leader trembled. The records we found speak of exterminations, species erased from existence. How do we know you will not do the same to us? Smiled. A long time ago, someone decided my people were too dangerous to exist. They tried to kill us all. They were wrong about us, and we would be wrong about you. Every species has potential. Every species deserves a chance to grow. She extended her hand, palm up, in the universal gesture of peace. Welcome to the galaxy. You are going to do amazing things. Far away in the darkness between stars, the Black Fleet held position. They were old ships now, most of them retired to reserve status. But a few still patrolled, crewed by volunteers who understood what the fleet represented. Not conquest, not domination, protection. Humanity had learned the weight of power. They had set the galaxy on fire, and then they had helped put out the flames. They had fought a war for survival and won something greater, a chance to prove that strength could serve justice, that the young could teach the old, that the universe was not a ladder to be climbed, but a garden to be tended. On the bridge of the Prometheus, now converted into a museum ship, a hologram of Admiral stood in eternal silence. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it, to understand where humanity had come from and where they were going. At the base of the hologram, a plaque bore her final words, spoken on her deathbed at the age of 93. We built our ships in the dark because we had no other choice. We lit the galaxy on fire because they gave us no other option. But when the fire burned out, we chose to plant seeds instead of salt. That is what humanity is. Not the war we fought, but the peace we built afterward. Remember the darkness, but always, always walk toward the light. The galaxy had tried to break humanity. Instead, humanity had transformed the galaxy. And the stars, once cold and hostile, now burned with the light of a billion possibilities.